It's Monday, the 8th of December 2025. Welcome to the Fast 5 Business News by Fear and Greed, where we give you the top 5 business stories you need to know in just 5 minutes. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Good morning, Michael.
Sean, 5 big stories to get through in just 5 minutes, so we better get cracking. Story number 1, the materials index, including the big miners and the gold companies, has been easily the best performer on the ASX over the last year, while healthcare and the tech indices have been the worst.
It's a total turnaround from last year when miners outside gold couldn't find a friend while tech stocks couldn't find an enemy. Over the past year, the materials index on the ASX, which includes the big miners as well as the gold companies, up 21%. Tech index down 21%. Healthcare's off 22%, in large part due to CSL's demise. Financials driven by the big banks, the biggest part of the ASX 200. Lacklustre year. Index is flat. Commonwealth Bank down 3%, has weighed on that one. The best performers, though, have been the gold stocks. Regis Resources, Resolute Mining, Genesis, Evolution. In fact, 8 of the top 10 performers so far this year on the ASX 200 are gold or gold-related stocks. That's very much thanks to record gold prices. The other miners have done well too. BHP up 10%, Fortescue Metals, Rio both up 15%. Away from gold, Harvey Norman's had a cracking year, so too Challenger, Telstra, Transurban Group. Best performer though, not on the ASX 200, a Tiddler, gold Tiddler called Dateline Resources. Over the past 12 months, up 8,233%, Michael.
That's not bad, is it? What about the flip side though, the worst performing stocks over the last year?
This is getting really interesting because many of the worst performers are actually well-known companies. So the worst performers, Plumbing Group Reece, maybe less known, Treasury Wine Estates, Guzman y Gomez, James Hardie, WiseTech Global, Premier Investments. Bunch of reasons for that: poor performance, valuation, selling off of assets. But I can't remember a year when the worst 6 stocks on the ASX 200, the 6 I just mentioned, were household names. The worst 25 includes Domino's, CSL, REA, Flight Centre, Goodman Group. Amazing how many high-profile companies have done poorly over the past 12 months.
Yeah. All right. On to story number 2 now. And the housing auction market has been given a bit of a taste of what higher interest rates might do, with the preliminary auction clearance rate falling to its lowest point in a year.
With expectations growing that the Reserve Bank has stopped cutting rates and fears that it may lift borrower costs next year, the market, which had a pretty good spring, hit a wall. Now, we'll find out more about that tomorrow when the Reserve Bank board meets and we find out what they're thinking on interest rates. Just 63.5% of homes that went to auction over the 63.5%, that went to auction over across the capitals last week were bought, down from 68.3% a week earlier and well over 70% last month. Sydney's result was particularly poor. Melbourne was okay, about 66%. Adelaide was down from normal. Volumes were lower. They will keep tracking down until February, according to Cotality.
Story number 3, Communications Minister Anika Wells is really under the gun over her use of public funds to take trips locally and abroad, but she does insist that she was working hard on all the trips.
Even the Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, fresh from his honeymoon, has been forced to defend her travel expenses. Wells has been under scrutiny since the cost of a trip to New York for her and 2 staffers came in at $100,000. Then there were reports she flew to Europe 3 times in 2023, 2024 at a cost of almost $120,000. The Australian Financial Review reported an Adelaide trip that included a friend's birthday, $3,681. That was flights, hotels, chauffeur-driven transport. Yesterday, The Age and Sydney Morning Herald said she billed taxpayers $13.89 for her husband and 2 of her 3 children to join her on a work trip to the Thredbo ski fields. Now, Wells insisted she's worked hard on all the trips and they're all necessary. Albanese sort of backed her, at least in terms of the New York trip. Pub test, though, Michael, it just doesn't look real good.
No, I don't think it does. Story number 4, the Defence Department, Sean, what do you make of this one, has urged the public to stay alert to unexploded ordnance devices, some of which will date back to World War II.
In a notice late last week, Defence said unexploded ordnance devices continue to pose a risk to the communities around Australia, particularly when disturbed or moved, most commonly found on or near former defence sites and demolition ranges. They can also be watched up on beaches. The warning comes as summer holidays begin. Defence wants people to be particularly careful in areas with a history of military activity or following storms. Defence has responded to over 450 calls regarding unexploded ordnance devices this year, which I think is quite extraordinary. Of course, we're talking about shells, grenades, bombs, other military munitions that basically didn't go off as intended when deployed.
Last one, story number 5. This is a big one to finish on, Sean. Netflix is set to buy Warner Brothers in an $83 billion deal, beating out Comcast and Paramount and demonstrating just how much Hollywood and big tech are merging.
The deal represents a dramatic plot twist for Netflix, which rewrote the Hollywood script, really upending how and when consumers watch movies and television shows. Suddenly it's become the thing it disrupted, a mainstream studio. Netflix, which has spent a decade developing such original series as Stranger Things, Bridgerton, the film K-pop Demon Hunters, it will gain access to Warner Brothers' trove of content. We're talking Game of Thrones, Harry Potter, DC Comics roster of superheroes. According to Reuters, it still needs regulatory approval. There are lots of debt involved. It isn't quite clear where the synergies are, particularly because until now Netflix has been a builder, not a buyer of content. And they're actually the words of CEO Greg Peters. But the intent is definitely there. So it's pretty unclear what it means for cinema goers, for cinema companies, now that Netflix is going to own the movie-making company.
All right, there we go. The top 5 business stories in 5 minutes. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Michael.
It's Monday, the 8th of December, 2025. Remember to hit follow on the podcast. And if 5 minutes just isn't enough, you can find our longer daily show called Fear and Greed, wherever you listen to podcasts. I'm Michael Thompson, and that was the Fast 5 Business News by Fear and Greed. Have a great day.